Have you ever wondered if one small act of kindness could change your entire life? The badge shouldn't have been there at all. Black sleek with a silver logo that caught the fluorescent light like a warning. Claire Dawson, a shy girl who'd spent 6 months trying to be invisible, stood frozen in the empty lobby, her fingers hovering above it as if touching something she had no right to claim. It was nearly 9 at night, and Haven Corp's glass towers had emptied hours ago. Claire had stayed late again, finishing filing work no one else wanted. She was a temporary assistant, the kind of employee people looked through rather than at. 25 years old, with gentle features and eyes that found the floor whenever someone spoke to her. For months, she'd moved through these halls like a ghost, completing tasks, without recognition, eating lunch alone, while others clustered in groups she'd never be invited to join. This heartwarming story begins in that moment of isolation, when one choice would reveal everything she'd been hiding. The lost and found office was dark locked for the night. Claire's heart drummed against her ribs. Leaving something this important felt wrong, but taking it felt worse. She reached into her bag and pulled out a scrap of paper and the fountain pen her grandmother had given her before she died. Her hand moved across the page with careful grace, her handwriting flowing with the precision of someone who'd once dreamed of making art that mattered. If this is yours, I hope it finds you again. C. She placed the note beneath the badge, aligned them perfectly, and walked away before doubt could freeze her there. What Claire didn't see was the security camera recording every elegant curve of her handwriting. She also didn't see Jenna Brooks pause near the stairwell, watching with narrowed eyes, before glancing around the empty lobby and slipping away without a word. What this shy girl had just touched would change everything, but the inspirational truth wouldn't emerge until much later. And the owner of that badge was about to discover something that would remind him of the person he missed most. By morning, the whispers had already started. Claire arrived at 7:30, prepared to fade into the background of another day. But something felt different. Clusters of employees stood in tight circles, voices, lowered eyes darting toward the executive floor. "Did you hear the CEO's Master Access badge is missing?" Claire's stomach dropped. She stopped at the coffee station, her hands suddenly unsteady. A woman from accounting leaned toward her colleague. "Security checked the logs. No unauthorized access, thank God. But that badge opens everything. Research labs, strategy vault, even the internal security systems." Claire's throat went dry. She thought of the sleek black card, the weight of it in her palm last night. That had been his, Mark Ellington's. The man who moved through the building like winter itself, all sharp edges and calculated silence. The CEO who'd built Haven Corp from a startup into a fortress, who spoke so rarely that people analyzed every word for hidden meaning. She'd touched his most protected possession and left it with nothing but a note written in her distinctive handwriting. Claire Dawson. Jenna Brooks appeared beside her, lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. 29, polished, ambitious in ways that made Claire feel like she was made of paper. "I heard you were working late last night." Yes, just catching up on filing." "Must be nice having so few responsibilities that you can just wander around after hours." Jenna's eyes traveled over Claire's plain blouse, her scuffed flats. Heat crept up Claire's neck. "I was finishing my work." "Sure." Jenna turned to leave, then paused. "People were right about you. You're made for small tasks, not real responsibility. Last night proved that." The words landed like stones. Claire opened her mouth, closed, it said nothing, as Jenna walked away. Her old boss's voice echoed in the silence. "Pretty handwriting won't give you a future. You're not leadership material." She'd heard it so many times she'd started to believe it. The morning crawled by in a fog of anxiety. Claire kept her head down, moving through her tasks with mechanical precision. But the tension in the office grew thicker with each passing hour. At 11:15, the intercom crackled. "Claire Dawson, please report to the executive floor immediately." The typing stopped. Heads turned. In the sudden silence, Claire could hear her own heartbeat. Jenna's voice carried from across the room. Well, that didn't take long. The elevator ride to the top floor lasted an eternity. Claire had never been above the third floor. Temporary assistants didn't get called to places where decisions were made. The executive reception area was all cold glass and steel. A woman in a pristine suit gestured toward a door. "He's waiting." Claire knocked with a trembling hand. "Come in." Mark Ellington sat behind a desk that seemed designed to emphasize distance. 38, with dark hair touched with gray and eyes that saw everything, revealed nothing. He studied Claire for a long moment. He held up a piece of paper. Her handwriting stared back at her. "You wrote this?" Claire's voice barely rose above a whisper. "Yes." "Where did you find the badge?" She told him everything. The empty lobby, the card under the chair, the locked office. The truth spilled out because lying had never been something she could do. Mark listened without interrupting. When she finished, silence settled between them. Then something shifted in his face. Something subtle. "This handwriting," he said quietly. "It reminds me of someone." For just a moment, his eyes went distant, seeing a memory that softened him in a way Claire had never witnessed before. She always said handwriting reflects the writer's heart. "And your heart, Miss Dawson." He paused. "It makes me want to trust you." Claire couldn't find words. "Thank you for your honesty. That will be all." She left without understanding what had happened, but feeling that she'd crossed a threshold she couldn't see. What Claire didn't know was that in Mark's office he sat staring at her note for a full 5 minutes, comparing it to letters his mother had written him decades ago. The similarity wasn't exact, but the spirit was identical. The care in every stroke. The belief that small things mattered. And somewhere deep in his chest, something that had been frozen for years began very slowly to thaw. By the time Claire reached her desk, Jenna was already composing an email that would destroy everything, or so she thought. But this heartwarming story was about to take a turn that would reveal who people truly were when they thought no one was watching. The email arrived company-wide at 2:30 that afternoon, sent from an anonymous account. Subject: security breach, badge incident. Yesterday evening, a temporary assistant discovered the CEO's master access badge and held it for several hours before reporting it. During this time, the individual had opportunity to access restricted systems. Investigation ongoing. All employees should be aware of proper security protocols. Claire's hands went numb. Around her, conversations erupted. People stared at their screens, then at her. The invisible girl suddenly visible for all the wrong reasons. "I didn't," she started to say. But who would listen? She grabbed her bag and fled to the only place that felt safe, the lobby where Walter Hayes, the evening security guard, kept watch. He was there early, sorting through items with patient hands. 62 years old, with silver hair and eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He'd been kind to her from her first day, the only person who consistently said good morning, like he meant it. "Claire." His voice gentled when he saw her face. "What happened, sweetheart?" The story came out in broken pieces. The badge, the note, the email destroying everything. Walter guided her to a chair and let her cry. "My old boss was right," Claire whispered. "My handwriting is just pretty but useless. I'm not meant for anything important." Walter was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his wallet and pulled out a faded photograph. A younger version of himself stood in front of a classroom, teaching children how to paint. "I used to be an art teacher," he said, "before my wife got sick and I needed better insurance, 30 years ago. And you know what I learned. The talent isn't about being loud or claiming credit. Real talent is in the quiet moments, in the care you put into something when no one's watching." He tapped the photograph. "Your handwriting. That's not just pretty, Claire. That's art. That's discipline and heart made visible. This shy girl sitting in front of me has a gift. Don't let fear tell you it doesn't matter." "But what if nobody sees it?" "What's right can look wrong until the truth shows up," Walter said gently. "And truth has a way of arriving exactly when it needs to. Don't lose faith in yourself too quickly." Claire wanted to believe him, but couldn't quite manage it. She returned to find a message waiting. A summons to conference room A, immediately. The walk felt like moving underwater. The glass walls revealed Mark already waiting with 2 people from security. Claire's pulse hammered. Mark gestured for her to sit. Then he pressed a button and a screen flickered to life. "I want you to watch something." The footage was clear enough. The lobby last night timestamp glowing. Claire appeared on screen, pausing when she saw the badge, kneeling to pick it up. The camera captured her uncertainty, the way she looked around for help. Then the note. The careful placement. The way she walked away without touching anything else. "No suspicious behavior," one of the security officers said. "She did exactly what she reported, sir." Mark nodded. The left lobby camera was under maintenance yesterday, creating a blind spot near the stairwell. Someone knew that and used it. He switched angles. This one showed the reception desk from the side. Jenna Brooks appeared, checking her phone, glancing around the empty lobby. She stood there for several minutes before walking away. The timestamp 8:47 p.m., 15 minutes before Claire arrived. "Miss Brooks reported nothing," Mark continued. "Despite being exactly where my badge was found. Yet somehow an anonymous email went out suggesting you had opportunity and motive." He turned to Claire, and she saw something in his eyes that looked like regret. "I'm sorry you were put through this." The email was traced to Miss Brooks's workstation. She found the badge, panicked, left it, then tried to deflect blame. The room tilted. Claire gripped the table. "You believe me?" Mark's expression softened. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, covered in elegant script that made Claire's breath catch. "My mother was an art teacher. She died when I was 16. These are all I have left. Notes she wrote me. Encouragement when I doubted myself. Reminders to be kind, to see people." He held up one letter next to Claire's note. The similarities were undeniable. Not identical, but resonant. The same careful strokes, the same attention to beauty. "When I saw your handwriting, I saw her. The way she believed that how you do anything reveals how you do everything. She used to say handwriting reflects the writer's heart." Mark's voice went softer. "And your heart, Miss Dawson. It makes me trust you completely. In fact, it's inspirational in ways I haven't felt in years." Something broke open inside Claire, not just relief, but something far more dangerous, hope. "What happens now?" she whispered. Mark's jaw tightened. "Now we address the person who tried to harm you." And in that moment, Claire realized this wasn't just about a lost badge anymore. It was about something much deeper, the value of integrity in a world that often rewarded deception. The meeting should have ended there. Vindication. Justice. But 3 days later, everything exploded in ways no one could have predicted. The executive presentation was scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. Regional directors flying in from 6 states, investors on video call from New York and Singapore. Haven Corp's entire quarterly strategy riding on 2 hours of carefully prepared materials. At 9:58, the presentation file wouldn't open. Claire watched from her desk as panic rippled through the 3rd floor. IT techs swarmed the conference room. The file was corrupted, backup wouldn't load, and 30 of the most important people in the company were walking through the door in 90 seconds. Mark emerged from his office, jaw tight. Options. We need at least an hour to rebuild from raw data files, the tech lead said. Maybe 2. We don't have 2 hours. We barely have 2 minutes. Sir, without the digital file. Then we do it another way. But there was no other way. The presentation was 30 slides dense with data visualization, timeline projections, market analysis graphs. You couldn't just describe that verbally. Claire's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Walter's words echoed. Courage isn't being unafraid. It's moving forward while you're afraid. She stood before her brain could stop her. Her legs carried her forward past her supervisor's desk, past the IT team, past every person who'd never truly seen her, straight to where Mark stood. I can do it. Her voice was too quiet. She tried again. I can recreate the presentation. By hand. Mark turned. What? On the glassboard. I've seen it 3 times while formatting documents. I remember the key data points, the timeline structure, the charts. The words came faster. I can draw it clearly enough to follow. It won't be pretty, but it'll be accurate. Someone laughed with dismissal. Mark studied her face for 3 heartbeats. Then he stepped aside. Show me. Claire walked into conference room A on trembling legs. 30 faces turned toward her, expressions ranging from confusion to skepticism. Jenna Brooks sat near the back, arms crossed, wearing a smile that promised humiliation. Claire picked up a marker. Her hand shook. Then she thought of her grandmother teaching her to write when she was 6. Every letter is a gift, sweetheart. Put your heart into it. She pressed the marker to glass and began. The first line was shaky, the second stronger. By the third, something shifted, a door opening onto a room she'd locked away years ago. Her hand moved with confidence she'd forgotten she possessed, creating headers in flowing script, data points in clean columns, timeline arrows that curved with architectural grace. The room went silent. Not awkward silence, but breathless silence of people witnessing something unexpected. Claire lost herself in the work. Numbers became art. Statistics became story. Her handwriting transformed the cold glass into something alive, human, readable, in ways the digital slides never had been. She moved from section to section, recreating the entire quarterly strategy from memory, each element connected by visual lines that made relationships clear. When she finished, her hand ached and her heart pounded. She turned to face the room. No one spoke for 5 full seconds. Then Mark stood and walked to the board, studying it with intensity that made Claire's throat tight. He traced one of the timeline branches with his finger. This is remarkable. Actually, it's better than the original. Clearer. More intuitive. A director from Atlanta leaned forward. Can we get copies of this? I want my team to see this approach. That handwriting. The investor from New York filled the video screen. Is that really hand-drawn? Mark looked at Claire with something new in his expression. Not just respect, recognition. Miss Dawson, would you stay for the meeting? I'd like you to walk us through your methodology. For the next hour and 40 minutes, she participated in the most important meeting of Haven Corp's quarter. People asked questions. She answered. They listened. And somewhere in those exchanges, the shy girl who'd spent 6 months being invisible began to believe she might actually matter. But as the investors logged off and directors filed out, Jenna Brooks remained seated, her face twisted with something desperate. "Congratulations," she said loudly. "I'm sure scheming for attention really paid off. First the badge incident, now this convenient file corruption. Amazing timing, Claire." The room froze. Mark turned slowly. "What did you just say, Miss Brooks?" Jenna's smile was sharp. "I'm saying what everyone's thinking. She's a temporary assistant who's suddenly everywhere the CEO is, getting special meetings, being pulled into presentations. It's suspicious." "Suspicious." Mark's voice went very quiet. "Would you like to know what's actually suspicious?" He pulled out his phone and pressed something. The wall screen flickered on. More security footage. Timestamp from this morning, 6:45 a.m., an hour before anyone else arrived. Jenna at a computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard, then standing looking around the empty office, walking quickly toward the stairwell. "IT traced the file corruption to a remote access command," Mark said. "Executed from your workstation, deleted shortly after but not thoroughly enough." Jenna's face drained of color. "That's not I didn't. The anonymous email about Miss Dawson, your workstation, the file corruption that happened hours after Miss Dawson proved her value, also your access credentials. And according to badge logs, you were in the lobby at 8:47 the night my access card went missing. I forgot something, I came back and—" Jenna's voice climbed. "So you're going to believe her over me? Someone who's been here 6 months versus 3 years. I believe evidence, and I believe people who do the right thing when no one's watching." Jenna stood so fast her chair scraped. Her face twisted with everything she'd been holding back. Who is she? She's nobody. A temporary assistant who writes pretty notes. I networked, I claimed credit, I positioned myself perfectly. And she just exists, and you notice her. Choose her. The words hung like broken glass. Mark's expression didn't change. At Haven Corp, we don't reward stepping on others' kindness. And we don't reward deception, no matter how carefully planned. I worked for 3 years. You worked for yourself. Miss Dawson worked for the work itself. There's a difference. He turned to HR. Begin termination proceedings. I want her escorted out within the hour. Jenna grabbed her bag. Fine, but she'll never be anything more than a girl who writes pretty letters. That's all she'll ever be. She walked out, heels clicking against polished floor. And in that silence, everyone understood justice had arrived, and it wouldn't be denied. Jenna's face drained of color, going from flushed anger to pale shock in a heartbeat. That's not, you can't prove the anonymous email about Miss Dawson, your workstation. Mark's voice remained steady, but something cold and implacable moved behind it. The file corruption that happened hours after Miss Dawson proved her value in front of the leadership team. Also your access credentials. And according to badge logs, you were in the lobby at 8:47 the night my access card went missing, despite claiming you left at 6:15. I forgot something at my desk, I came back and just... Jenna's voice climbed higher, cracking with desperation. This is ridiculous. You're going to believe her over me. Someone who's been here 6 months versus 3 years of my dedicated service. I believe evidence, Mark said quietly, with the finality of a judge passing sentence. And I believe people who do the right thing when no one's watching. Jenna stood so fast, her chair scraped against the polished floor, with a sound like a scream. Her face twisted with everything she'd been holding back. Resentment, jealousy, rage at a world that hadn't rewarded her schemes the way she thought it should. "Who is she?" Jenna's voice broke raw and ugly. "She's nobody, a temporary assistant who writes pretty notes and hides in corners. I did everything right. I networked at every company event, I claimed credit for team projects, I positioned myself perfectly for advancement. And she just exists. And you notice her, choose her over me." The words hung in the air like broken glass, cutting and impossible to take back. Mark's expression didn't change, but his eyes went hard. "At Haven Corp, we don't reward stepping on others' kindness, Miss Brooks. And we don't reward deception, no matter how carefully planned. I worked for 3 years. You worked for yourself. Miss Dawson worked for the work itself. There's a difference." He turned to the HR director. "Begin termination proceedings. I want her escorted from the building within the hour." Jenna grabbed her bag with shaking hands. "Fine. Fine, but you know what? She'll never be anything more than a girl who writes pretty letters. That's all she'll ever be. And you're a fool for thinking otherwise, Mr. Ellington. A sentimental fool." She walked out, heels clicking against polished floor like gunshots. Silence settled over the conference room. Claire stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. The vindication felt too large, too overwhelming. Part of her wanted to chase after Jenna to apologize for existing, for taking up space. That was what invisible people did. Mark turned to her. "Miss Dawson, can you stay for a moment?" The remaining executives filed out quietly. Then it was just the two of them, and a glass board covered in Claire's handwriting proof that she could be more than people assumed. "I owe you an apology," Mark said into the silence. Claire blinked. "Sir, I've walked past your desk probably 300 times in 6 months. I never once stopped to ask your name or see what you were capable of." He gestured toward the board. "Talent like this doesn't develop overnight. You've had this gift your entire life and I never noticed. That's my failure, not yours. I'm just a temporary. You're a person with skills this company desperately needs." Mark interrupted gently. He pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. "We're opening a new division, creative communication and brand identity. We couldn't find the right director. Someone who understands that communication isn't just about information, it's about connection." Claire stared at the job description. Salary that made her dizzy. Benefits that seemed impossible. Security. Stability. A future that looked nothing like the one she'd imagined. "I don't understand," she whispered. "My mother used to tell me that kindness is a language everyone understands, but only some people speak fluently. You speak it fluently, Claire. In your handwriting, your actions, the way you move through the world." Mark's voice softened. "I see it because she taught me to look for it, and I want you to lead this division if you're willing. But I don't have experience leading people. You have integrity. You have talent that made 30 executives stop and pay attention. And you have the courage to step forward when it matters most." He smiled. "Everything else can be learned. I'd rather teach skills to someone with character than try to teach character to someone with skills." Claire looked at the glass board, at the evidence of what she could create when fear didn't hold her back. Then she looked at Mark Ellington, this man who'd seen her grandmother's gift in her handwriting, who'd recognized his mother's values in a simple note. "Yes," she whispered, then gathering courage. "Yes, I'll do it." Mark smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time since she'd met him, and it transformed his entire face. "Good. Because this company needs more people like you. People who care about doing what's right even when it's hard. He walked to the door, then paused, looking back at her. My mother used to leave me notes in my lunchbox when I was a kid. Just little reminders written in her beautiful handwriting. Be kind, Mark. See people. Help them see themselves. After she died, they were all I had of her voice. His eyes found Claire's, and she saw the vulnerability there. When I saw your note under my badge, it was like hearing her again after 16 years of silence. That same belief that small acts matter. That beauty and kindness aren't weaknesses, they're the things that make us human. She sounds like someone special, Claire said quietly. She was, and she would have loved you. She always said the world needed more people who led with kindness instead of ambition. Mark's voice went soft. I didn't always understand what she meant, but watching you these past weeks, I'm starting to. Welcome to Haven Corp Director Dawson. Your real job starts Monday. Claire stood alone in the conference room for a long time after he left, staring at the handwriting on the glass board, at the proof that the shy girl who'd been invisible for so long was finally being seen. And somewhere deep inside, she felt something bloom, not just hope, but belief. Belief that maybe she'd always been enough. She'd just been waiting for someone to notice. Someone finally had. And that changed everything. What started with one heartwarming act of returning a lost badge had become something neither Claire nor Mark could have imagined, a chance for both of them to honor the people who'd taught them that kindness was never wasted. 1 month later, Claire sat in her new office, small but hers, with afternoon sunlight streaming through windows overlooking the city. Her desk held a nameplate that still made her catch her breath. Claire Dawson, Director of Creative Communication. The division was growing. She'd hired 2 assistants already, both quiet people who reminded her of who she used to be. People who needed someone to see them the way Mark had seen her, the way Walter had seen her all along. She picked up a fountain pen, not her grandmother's this time, but a new one Mark had given her on her first day, engraved with words his mother used to say, "Kindness is never wasted." On a small card, she wrote in the elegant script that had changed everything, "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." She placed it in a gift box along with a book on art history and carried it down to the lobby. Walter was at his post organizing evening security logs. His face lit up when he saw her. "Claire, don't you look official?" She laughed and handed him the box. "This is overdue." Walter opened it, slowly read the card, and his eyes went bright with emotion. "Sweetheart, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. You were the first person here who treated me like I mattered, before anyone else noticed you did. That meant everything." Walter pulled her into a hug that felt like coming home. A shadow fell across them. Mark stood in the lobby entrance, briefcase in hand, watching with an expression that was almost tender. "Sorry to interrupt. Walter, has Claire told you about the new mentorship program she's designing?" She mentioned something. She wants to create opportunities for employees who've been overlooked, people with quiet talents that traditional hiring might miss. It's exactly what this company needs. Truly inspirational. Walter beamed. "That's my girl." Mark moved closer, and Claire noticed vulnerability in his careful composure. "You know the way you look at your work, Claire. The care you put into everything. My mother used to look at her students the same way, like their potential was something sacred." Claire's throat tightened. "She sounds like someone I would have loved to know." "She would have loved you. She always said the world needed more people who led with kindness. I didn't always understand what she meant." Mark's voice went soft. "But watching you these past weeks, I'm starting to." Walter made a sound of approval. "You're learning, son. That's what matters. The three of them stood in the golden afternoon light, an elderly security guard who'd once been an art teacher, a CEO learning to honor his mother's legacy, and a young woman who'd discovered that being seen was just the beginning of becoming who she was, always meant to be. "Kindness comes full circle," Mark said softly. "Always." Claire nodded, believing it now in ways she never had before. Outside the glass walls, the city moved on in its relentless rhythm. But inside this small pocket of warmth, three people understood a truth the world often forgot: that worth isn't measured in volume or aggression, that talent doesn't always announce itself, and that sometimes the quietest hearts hold the strongest light. And that light, once seen, can illuminate everything.